Hello to you all, and welcome to the Digital Forum presented by the Philadelphia Alliance for Capital and Technology. This podcast is called Coffee with Bach, and we're here to give you the download on all things AI and emerging technology. Tune in with us weekly leading up to the Phorum Technology Conference on April 22nd, 2025 at the Comcast Technology Center. Phorum is an annual conference showcasing Philadelphia and the Philadelphia area's best in technology, as well as business, enterprise, and all things to do with tech and how technology affects everything, not only in this area, but really across the world. Today, I have my co-host with me, Peter Coffey. Peter, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Mike, it's great to be with you. I've had the privilege of being associated with the Forum event in almost every single year that it's run. And I continue to feel that it is a unique combination of perspectives of the innovators from the academic community of Philadelphia and New York and Boston, from the practitioners of the important enterprises and public sector organizations in that area, and from the access to capital markets in New York, Boston, and up and down the East Coast, so that you bring these things together, the innovators, the practitioners, and those who will provide the resources to turn these ideas into life-changing organizations and behaviors. My role at Salesforce is to be an internal and external consultant. The job was originally called Head of Platform Research back 18 years ago, but platforms started to become, in fact, the majority of what we sell, and it sounded like it was a product title. So now I'm Vice President for Strategic Research. The logo that I designed for what I do has the motto, "We don't predict, we reveal." I'm a big fan of the William Gibson line about the future's already here, just very unevenly distributed. But more recently, I found that Alvin Toffler, as in Future Shock, took that quotation and said, well, more to the point, the present has begun to grind to a halt, which I think is a more compelling statement for people. It's not that there's cool stuff there if you feel like taking the risk of trying it. It's that the option of continuing with what you're doing is something that has a past its sell-by date. And it's really important not to view being on the leading edge of the emerging tech as an option. It really is a necessity. And I'm happy to have the chance with you to talk with people about what that implies and maybe about some of the caveats that should come with that idea.
Peter, it's great to have you here, and great that you're a co-host, and great that you have spent so many years with PACT. You and I both share similar types of roles in each of our companies. Yeah. And I run research and innovation strategy at a company called Boomi, and we're based in the Philadelphia area. We work with companies like Salesforce and many other platform-based companies that have really grown, as you said, beyond the platform and into something far more emergent than maybe our leaders envisioned 20 or so years ago.
Boomi's been an important partner for us. Without the ability to reach out and connect to the truth, the most intelligent systems you can build are powerless to do anything actually valuable.
Absolutely. Well, in this inaugural episode of Coffee with Bach, and by the way, we're taking liberties with our names because they're both they're fun. And
it was too easy. Yeah.
It was too easy.
I could have a fugue playing in the background, but that would really be overdoing
it. Absolutely. Well, we're both working on some interesting things right now. I'm interested today in getting your opinion. Maybe we could talk a little bit more about where we're at in the state of technology in February of 2025. And, I'm thinking about DeepSeek, especially today. And I'm thinking about the impact that had. And even though that was 2 weeks ago and much has happened since then, what's your take on what's going on with DeepSeek and other types of LLMs coming really out in the open source community all over the planet?
Mike, I have pointed out to some of my colleagues that it was literally almost 2 years ago, April of 2023, when I wrote an internal post on a thread that I maintain here at Salesforce. And the title of that week's post was, "Don't Say ChatGPT." And the reason that I was discouraging people from treating that label as the new Jello, the new Band-Aid, the new Kleenex, for AI, the new generic term for, quote, doing AI, unquote, is that ChatGPT was merely a conversational front end placed on top of a large language model. And there are several reasons why people should not allow that to become their definition of what AI is. Eric Brynjolfsson at MIT commented recently that the Turing trap, Turing as in Alan Turing, Turing, was that back in the 50s, he talked about the so-called Turing test. It's called that now. He called it the imitation game. That if a machine intelligence can carry on a conversation and you really can't tell that you're talking to a machine, then it's arguably demonstrating intelligence. Well, as Eric Brynjolfsson said, the problem with that definition is that it sent, at this point, 2 or 3 generations of research down the path of let's try to make something that can mimic a human being. Mm-hmm. Well, we don't need anything that mimics a human being. We have human beings. What would be really cool is if we had things that could do things that humans don't do well. Like, for example, entertain several genuinely different hypotheses simultaneously, which even a group of people have a hard time doing, the so-called behavior of anchoring in a meeting, where the first decent idea that gets thrown out becomes the center of the conversation, and the rest is iterating up and down and putting error bars on that one idea and trying to say, well, wait a minute, let's back up. Is there a completely different way of thinking about this? That's almost socially inappropriate. People say, no, we're making progress here. Don't make us throw away all that effort. So arguably, what you really want is to be building AI to do what people don't do well, instead of judging the success of your AI by whether it convincingly imitates a person. So that's one of the issues. The other thing about DeepSeek in particular is that I saw people saying, oh, it's the Sputnik moment. It's the pivotal moment that's going to change everything. To which my response, and again, this is based on something I said 2 years ago, this is not the Sputnik moment. This is the VisiCalc moment. This is the moment when, instead of computers in companies being great big hulking monster mainframes behind glass walls tended by priest acolytes, running COBOL that could only do a small number of very general purpose things because it was so expensive to do anything on those systems. They ran applications like General Ledger. And then, quite suddenly, you had people walking into storefronts that hadn't existed before with names like Computerland saying, I need VisiCalc and something that runs it. They had no desire to own a computer. What they did have a desire to do was be able to build a model, a financial model, an arithmetic model, that would give them the power to explore ideas in a very specific, narrowly focused, granular, and ad hoc way that they had not been able to do with hulking monster COBOL general ledgers. And what DeepSeek demonstrated to everybody, other than my colleagues at Salesforce who've been running large language models on Macintosh M4 minis for months now, is that this is something everyone can have. Everyone can have the ability to train a model on a data set that's interesting to them, a trusted data set, a reliable data set that's not going to be prone to hallucination and bias, and have an assistant capable of making suggestions that might not have occurred to them, capable of taking them into spaces of considering solutions to problems that might not have occurred to them, and the idea that almost in a matter of weeks, we've gone from that being something that only a relatively tiny population of pretty technical hackers and hobbyists were exploring to something that almost everybody can imagine. And it also makes Apple's model of putting as much of the intelligence on the edge device as possible look prescient. I don't believe it was so much prescient as recognizing the pattern. This is what happens, and moving the intelligence to the edge of the network and letting it take advantage of connection but not be dependent on centralization really is the combination that I think people want to have AI give them.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I mean, let's point out a couple of obvious features. The cost to train R1 with DeepSeek was a fraction of the cost of some of the closed source models, like anything coming from OpenAI, Anthropic, so on. And now all of a sudden, we have a model that can perform as well or better than some of these closed source models, and it's widely distributable. And I don't know about you, but if you look at all of the platforms where you can download open source models like Hugging Face, like Olama,
Yes.
uh, we're seeing record number of downloads on this model specifically because it performs so well. And it was trained on so few dollars in
Yes.
comparison to what any of OpenAI models were trained on. What do you say about that?
Well,
Like,
I'm glad you introduced the phrase open source into the conversation, because open sourcing the code of the model is not the same thing as open sourcing the data set used to train that model. And I can have an open source model in that I can download the ignorant idiot tabula rasa model and then train it. Or do they really mean I can freely download a model trained on a data set that gives it something useful to say? So the phrase open source, which already had a number of meanings in the community of, shall we say, software as we used to know it,
mhm,
has perhaps even more meanings now that the training data is such an extraordinarily integral part of the value. If I download a piece of accounting software, I don't really need it to come with a sample, set of corporate books.
mhm.
I can use it with my own data. In many cases, people want to download a model with the expectation that it's already going to be able to do useful things for them. That's completely dependent on the data with which it was trained. And that's another very interesting topic, the so-called subject of distillation. Do models bootstrap themselves by training on the questions and answers produced by other models?
Mhm.
There's already significant research showing that when models consume each other's output, the variety, the creativity, if you will, the quality by various measures of their results plummets. It deteriorates quite quickly as they stop having that vigor and diversity. And
Mhm.
it's been said, I think it was Elon Musk who said that pretty much at this point, all the human originated data available for model training has been consumed. And a growing fraction of the data that's available to train models is model produced result. And we don't yet know what's going to happen, but we do have evidence that we need to preserve the access of the models to a human level of diversity and creativity if we want them to continue to demonstrate value.
Yeah, that sounds like a topic for a another conversation that we're going to have. And
Oh, yeah.
for our audience, these particular sessions that we're having are meant to be 15 to 20-minute sessions to give you a piece of what the world is actually seeing, a
Yep.
quick vantage point into what is happening with emerging tech. And so I would like to tackle data in a different episode. But I do want to. I do think that in terms of training these models on data, enough data is something we need to consider. I also think we need to look at, hey, can one model do the job of all models at some point, or the so-called.
And that would be something to avoid doing. I think it was Marvin Minsky who coined the expression "society of mind" to say that the best way to think about AI is as a panel of experts with diverse points of view that you can have around the table advising you instead of just one all-knowing thing. We've got just a little under 2 minutes left, and if people are going to have a takeaway from today, I hope it will be, when you hear people talking about DeepSeek, don't think about a small handful of highly capitalized companies now having their stock price plummet and their price structures be challenged. Think of it instead as that VisiCalc moment when anyone who would like to have a quick thinking, unbiased expert helping them think of ideas that might not have occurred to them without that help can now aspire to that being available to them. And I'm talking about from elementary school on up. The elementary school teachers who say, how am I ever going to teach my kids to write when the AI will do it for them, are missing the point. The point
Mhm.
is, now you can show them a prompt, show them what an AI wrote, and have them start at an early age being evaluators and critics of writing instead of just struggling to produce their own paragraphs. So it's not that we'll do the old things better, faster, cheaper. It's that we can do things that we could not do before. And I really think that's what emerging ought to imply.
I really like that. And I think one last question I want to leave with you as we're thinking about these models in general. What are some things that are still missing? What are some gaps that we have today that you're seeing firsthand, whether they're practical or theoretical, in the lab or actually in practice? What are some gaps that you're noticing?
Well, the other day I had a good experience with a service provider. I gave them 5 stars, and I got back an email saying, "We're so glad you had a good experience." And the inbox AI summary of that email said, "We're sorry you had a bad experience." Now, when these tools are still making not merely clumsy glitches, but reversing the sense of the meaning of something in that dramatic a way, I think it's tremendously important that we at Salesforce, we don't just say we want to keep a person in the loop. We want to have a human at the helm, and maintaining a human responsible party with some ability to recognize dumb things before they do damage is still utterly essential to the credibility and the social appropriateness of this technology.
Yeah, I can see that. I do, however, see a rapid move toward humans being the expert that the AI system is going to defer to. But I also see, as you said before, that the human is really going to be using her, his, and their brain differently than ever before
I
because
hope so.
precisely
I
we
hope
have,
so.
yes,
And
we have
and
this.
and redefining education as the crafting of that skill set instead of the pumping of subject matter knowledge into a human brain is one of the big challenges that we have.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna take this episode and then start to add on to it, and hopefully we can add to your knowledge and so that your brain can be unlocked going forward. Remember, PACT Forum, the Philadelphia Alliance for Capital and Technology Forum, our marquee technical conference, is happening on April 22nd, 2025 at the Comcast Center. We hope to see you there, and keep tuning in every week to Coffee with Bach here on Digital Forum. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.